Hello and welcome to this edition of Flap TV, where the area's largest Facebook group dedicated to politics, Fitchburg-Leominster All Politics, jumps from your computer screen to your television screen. Our special guests for this episode, on the left, State Representative Stephan, Democrat from Fitchburg, and on the right, City Councilor from Leominster, Mark Bodanza, Republican, also Chairman of the Finance Committee in the City of Leominster. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yep, thank you very much.
Good. Issue 1 on November 7th. Voters will pick a Democratic candidate in a primary in the special election for state senate to replace outgoing Senator Jennifer Flanagan. That Democrat will go up against Republican Dean Tran of Fitchburg and longtime City Councilor Claire Frieda of Leominster, who is running as an unenrolled candidate. Now, depending on who wins the Democratic primary, there will either be 2 Fitchburg candidates versus 1 Leominster candidate, or 1 Leominster candidate versus 2 Fitchburg candidates. Question: does the candidate's hometown sway votes? Does it have an impact, or are voters going to base their decisions based on party affiliations, personalities, issues, or other factors? Michael.
I think it depends. You have to look at the individual race. I think it can. And I've come around a little bit on this because it was posted, the question was posted in the Facebook group, and at first I really just sort of dismissed it, and I've sort of come around to it because you've given me some specific examples in this specific race, and I think it could come down to affecting the race. Given these particular candidates, I think there would be some city municipal alliance. I think one thing that does get downplayed in an election like this is party. And I do think, I mean, you had although Massachusetts is a Democratic state, you had Mary Padula for years and years and years, served as a state senator, and she was a Republican. You, of course, had Jennifer Flanagan and Bobby Antonioni and Jennifer Flanagan, who were state senators, who are sort of seen as moderate centrist Democrats. So I think the party affiliation does take a back seat. And yeah, in this particular race, I think place of origin is going to come down. It could make a difference.
Mark.
Well, I mean, naturally, the candidates are known better in their place of residence. So in terms of name recognition, that's obviously in politics a very important factor, especially in this particular race. So you would tend to think that the Fitchburg candidate is better known in Fitchburg, and the Leominster candidates are better known in Leominster. I'm not sure that Kushmerek has a lot of name recognition in Leominster, and that may have an impact. But we've seen in other races, most notably the rep race last fall, name recognition not necessarily always the answer. Sometimes it can be a negative too. Mm-hmm. So I think I think more than the party affiliation, I think the place of residence is going to have an impact.
It is. Steve?
Yeah, I would agree with Mark that the name recognition in your individual town. Obviously, Michael Kushmerek, president of the City Council in Fitchburg. People in Fitchburg know him and have seen him and talked to him and know where he stands. Mr. Mahan and Shalafo Zephyr in Leominster. People in Leominster know them and have talked with them and understand where they stand. I think the job for all the candidates is making sure that people outside of your town, the people who don't know you, get to know you over the next 4 weeks. That's the real task. And not just the Fitchburg candidate getting known in Leominster or the Leominster candidates getting known in Fitchburg. The Fitchburg and Leominster candidates need to get known in Gardner, and they need to get known in Townsend, and they need to get known in part of Clinton and in Sterling and the other towns that make up the district. Because that's the important piece. The important piece is getting your brand out, getting who you are out to people so that they know and can make educated, informed decisions. I would like to say that there are 40 senatorial districts in the state of Massachusetts, and I have said for years that 39 of them could claim that their state senator was the second best in the state, that we were fortunate enough to have the #1 state senator for an awful long time, and whoever wins this race has some big shoes to fill, and we'll have to be very diligent and hardworking to do the job that Senator Flanagan did for us.
Definitely. Cindy?
I agree. Big shoes to fill there for sure. And Jen was really good about reaching out to people in all communities, and I think that is the key. I agree that, obviously there's the name recognition in your town is going to weigh on some people, but it is up to the candidates to make sure that everybody understands that you're there for the region, for that your area, and you got to get out there and let people know, and it's up to the voters to get informed, find out about all the candidates and what they have to offer, and how you feel about them, and make a good decision. Don't just base it on because you know them.
Good point. Michael alluded to that we asked this question in our group on our weekly poll. We do a weekly poll every week in Fitchburg-Leominster All Politics, and we asked this question, and it was almost unanimous where people said, no, we are not going to use the hometown as our metric in choosing a candidate. But I'm not sure I believe that. Let me ask you a question, Steve. If you're Dean Tran and you don't have a primary challenger, so you get to sit back on November 7th, are you really, from a strategy standpoint, rooting for one of those Leominster candidates to win rather than Mike Kuchmarek? So you have so he will be facing two Leominster candidates who may split the vote in Leominster, or is Dean Tran going to be looking at other factors instead?
I'd like to first say that although you said you're not sure you believe those people, I'd certainly hope that that's what they intend to do and they look to do, to take the city or town out of it and really make the decision based on the candidates and their qualifications and what they stand for. Certainly, I think from a practical standpoint, if you are the Republican candidate who is unopposed and doesn't have a primary, he's probably going to look at a lot of different factors trying to figure out what would be to his advantage. I think it's something that he really doesn't have control over, and he just is going to have to wait and see, and then we'll have to make an adjustment. Maybe his advantage to have two Leominster folks who do split some votes, maybe to his advantage to have the Fitchburg candidate and he does better in the small cities and towns. I'm not sure where that goes, but it's certainly a strategy that they'll have to pay attention to.
Mark, if you were Claire Frieda, are you rooting for Mike Kuchmarek in the primary so you're not splitting votes in Leominster, or?
I think so. And to follow up with your other question, I think, from a point of view of Dean Tran, it's a huge advantage, I think, to have two Leominster people in that race and two women, particularly. So you get a gender issue as well going there. So, if that vote's split up in Leominster, split up in terms of gender, those seem to be factors, that might mitigate towards Dean Tran. But, this is all a guesswork business, right, at the end of the day. And I think, whoever gets a message out there that resonates, we hope, is the one that will gain the traction, because after all, it's about the issues in the end.
Really, it's really hard to pinpoint this one, especially where it's a special election. We're talking about a general election that's going to be on December 5th. I'm not anticipating a very high voter turnout. We all agree on that.
I certainly can speak to that. I had a primary on February 1st and a special on March 1st, and the task is to get your voters out.
Right.
That's really what it is. I can't guess what the number will be, but it'll be a very low percentage-wise that come out on December 5th. And so the goal for all those candidates, whoever they may be, will be to get your people out. I think, the November one, where the primary is, because it's the same day as the city elections, and you have a mayoral race, and you have some council races. I think there'll be a bigger number coming out. But yeah, the December 5th one will be the one to see how many people get out there.
Anyone want to go out on a limb and predict who's going to win the Democratic primary on November 7th? Not necessarily who you support, but who do you think's going to win the day on November 7th?
I don't know. That's a tough one for me.
I would say the same thing. I mean, as a Democrat, I think I'm very comfortable with the fact that we have three good candidates. That I truly believe that, and I certainly hope that as Democrats who ever wins on November 7th, that all of the Democrats will get behind that candidate.
Mike or Cindy, any predictions? Who's coming out on top November 7th?
The Democratic primary, I predict Mike Mahan.
Cindy?
I would say so too. I'm leaning that way.
Okay. All 3 Democratic candidates for state senate will be right here at this table on Saturday morning for a candidates forum. I will be hosting that forum for 1 hour. We are going to get to learn a lot about the candidates and where they stand on issues. We will be live streaming that program on Fitchburg-Leominster All Politics, and it will be broadcast on your local cable access channel over the next few weeks. So make sure you join in so you can make that decision from an informed standpoint. Issue 2, many workers in Massachusetts this week enjoyed a 3-day holiday weekend thanks to the Christopher Columbus holiday. However, over the past few years, there has been a growing movement to ditch the Columbus Day holiday and replace it with something called Indigenous Peoples Day. This year, the first Massachusetts tribe to make contact with the Pilgrims, the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, officially changed their calendar to make that change. Mark, do you support the continued recognition of Columbus Day as a state holiday, or should it be changed?
Yeah, I do. As a historian in particular, tradition means something to me. I do understand that each generation sees history through a different lens and that history is dynamic. But, I think this sort of craze that's taken over the nation with respect to reinventing our historical heritage, if you will, I'm not sure it's all bad, but I think the pendulum swung a little too far. If we're going to do away with Columbus Day, we ought to take a hard look at Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, if you're going to do away with Columbus Day, maybe you should take down the Jefferson Memorial and take Jefferson off the nickel. If people really knew what Thomas Jefferson stood for, there would be a great debate over it. I mean, the Jefferson Memorial talks about the inevitability of slavery being ended in America. It doesn't mention the fact on those sacred walls that he also predicted that we would never live together. He wrote one book. In that one book, he compared blacks and whites, and if I was to go through that now, I'd shock a lot of people as to what some of those comparisons were. He suggested, in essence, that blacks were a subspecies of the human race because their female progenitors were raped by orangutans in Africa. This is Thomas Jefferson. So, there's nothing wrong with sort of taking a hard look at our past and re-examining it, but I think at some point we go a little too far.
Steve?
Yeah, I would say that the history in the past was a different time, and there were different people with different viewpoints and things. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't look at them and say, geez, we wish it was different, or that they hadn't done certain things. But to change a holiday that has honored an individual for discovering America, as they say, whether it was by accident or not, I don't think we want to change that. I think what we want to do is have fruitful discussions about the individuals and in the past and things that they did, and make sure that history doesn't repeat itself or that we change things, So that's where I would stand.
Cindy?
I agree. I agree with Mark as far as I think we've gotten a little too crazy with everything is offensive nowadays. And so history is offensive. It is offensive. It's part of our history, and we've learned from it. Hopefully we've made major changes. I think we have. But to take away, we're taking away statues, monuments. We're going to take away holidays. Everything is, anybody can find something offensive about each holiday, if you really want to get down to it. So you're taking something that we've grown up with. It's a tradition. Is he the first person to discover America? Clearly not. I mean, we don't know the Native Americans. There's questions about that. Some people argue that the first people in America came from Asia before Native Americans. So I mean, you can argue who's what he stood for. It was the time and the place at the time. Was he a great guy? Probably not. Or was everybody great back then? Probably not. It's what you do. But to just change everything, is it that important to me? Not really. But what's next? If we change this right now because it's going to make people feel better, what is the next thing that we're going to do? It's never ending. There's always this turn the corner. And so we'll just wipe away our history so we don't ever have to remember any of the bad stuff.
What could possibly be offensive about Festivus? You said every holiday could be offensive.
Oh, pretty much.
I mean, we air our
somebody-
grievances here every week.
Somebody would find offense to it, I'm sure.
Michael?
Maybe it's not good for ratings here, but I think we have unanimity here on this issue. I mean, I think Mark put it very succinctly. I mean, yeah, of course, Columbus didn't discover anything. It was here already, and there were people here as it was. I guess they discovered it first. But I dare you to find someone who changed a single individual who changed the course of history more. Okay, in terms of the opening up to the new world and the colonization of the new world, the good and the bad. And Mark and Steve and Cindy all bring up good points, and so I would just be repeating what they would say, quite honestly. I mean, all kidding aside, and yeah, you can point out to some really offensive things and some really troubling things, but you can do the same with. You can do the same with Jefferson. You can do the same with, quite honestly, you take certain Abraham Lincoln quotes out of context, or you take certain Abraham Lincoln quotes in isolation, our greatest president ever. You're not going to have too much of you're going to have a conflicting opinion on him.
Very good. Regardless of your own opinion on whether we should keep the Columbus Day holiday or not, I think we've seen the momentum grow and grow over the past few years. 10 years from now, is Columbus Day going to be a recognized holiday in the Commonwealth?
I think so. I mean, it's interesting. When I was researching one of my books, I found in the 30s, the only school in Leominster that was closed on Columbus Day was Lancaster Street School, which of course served the Italian-American population. Every other school in the city was
Not even
open.
St. Anna's?
Well, they didn't have a school then.
Oh, okay.
If they had one, it would have been closed.
Closed, yeah.
But so, I mean, what it meant in the 30s, especially to Italian Americans, is totally different than what it means today. In 10 years, it'll be watered down still. Even now, I would say it's a wonderful holiday because there's nothing to do. To take it off. Unlike some of the other holidays where there's great preparation, they're wonderful holidays too, but there's great preparation involved.
Well, they have some good Italian food in the North End, too. They have a big festival in Boston where you can go eat cannoli.
They do.
I'm sure they do, yeah.
Yes.
It is a second-tier holiday. It's up there. It's like with the Patriots Days of the world. I mean, my office is open on Columbus Day.
What's second tier about a cannoli?
It's a holiday. Get your mind off of food.
Did you go to the cannoli festival?
I did not. No.
I mean, the one thing we could agree on was he was the first European to discover America.
Well, he also opened really the sustained relations between the Americans and Europe, right? And as Michael said, that's a huge impact. Did you go to the cannoli festival?
I did not.
Steve, did you go to the cannoli?
Did not.
No one went to the cannoli festival. Anyone else want to take a bite at this, Steve?
I will say that the people I have spoken to who went to the cannoli festival said they were excellent.
Yeah, that
Yes.
Cape Cod cannoli ones. That's what I'm hearing, that Cape Cod truck. I heard they had the best cannolis. So what do you think, 10 years from now, is Columbus Day going to be a holiday in this state?
I think it'll still be here. I think that maybe we'll add some holidays if people want to create some different things to honor some different people as opposed to taking things away.
More 3-day weekends?
Not a bad thing.
Well, people will, I think it'll still be here, but I think some people will probably call it another name. And
That's their
each
right,
his own.
right?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Whatever works.
Yep.
Very good. Issue 3, lots of controversy over the past few weeks about NFL players kneeling in silent protest during the playing of the national anthem. Donald Trump, among others, and I think the latest was the NFL commissioner himself, are calling on the players to stand or be benched. Do you support punishment for these players, or do you support their right to take a knee, Representative Hay?
I'd start off by saying I think it's very unfortunate that one person's individual decision to protest or make a statement by kneeling during the national anthem because of his beliefs regarding some issues with the police and minority population and those things has now become a question of your patriotism, whether you stand for the flag in the national anthem. And I think we've got some issues that are confused. Personally, I always stand for the national anthem, and it bothers me when I see people talking and people walking around and people without
not taking their hats off and all of those things. But those are individual choices that those people are making. And I believe we have a freedom in this country which allows people to demonstrate or speak or say things in certain manners. And I don't think they're being disrespectful. I think that, I hear many veterans who say to me, and I've heard them on television and read in articles, who say that, they fought for people's rights to be able to do this. I think, unfortunately, we now have a lot of social media and we have a lot of other venues for people to vent their frustrations and their angers about it. And sometimes I want to ask those people, when you're at home and you're watching the game and the anthem comes on, do you stand up? Where is this line? What do people do? They're such patriots. If it bothers a veteran, that concerns me, or a veteran or anybody who served in the armed services, that concerns me, and I'd like to talk with them and discuss it and try to show the proper respect and things. But we've got a lot of people who are saying a lot of things that I feel are not really to do with the subject, and they've turned it into a different topic. Whether the NFL, that's up to the NFL, and that's up to the owners and the commissioner and the players. They're employees. They have to abide by guidelines and rules like we all do when we go to our place of employment. I thought 2 weeks ago, when many more people did it, that was in response to President Trump trying to tell them what they could do and what they can't do, which was a third separate issue. First, you had the issue of the one player doing it. Then you had the issue of making it a flag and a national anthem thing, and then you made it a response to the president trying to tell people what they could do and they couldn't do. I thought the Dallas Cowboys that day did something that was really good. They all went out and took a knee together, which is their way of saying we're a team, we're a group, we support our players who have these questions and these concerns, but then we will stand up for the anthem. So I think the players need to find the way to do it, which is appropriate and works, and whether the league bans it or outlaws it, I think they're going to have a real problem if they try to. I think it's First Amendment. You start telling people what they can say and what they can do, I think it's just going to create a bigger firestorm.
Cindy.
Well, I have a different view, to be honest. They have the right to kneel. In this case, they're being paid to do a job. The Department of Defense pays the NFL to have those players out on the field to stand for the national anthem. And that happened in 2009. Before that, they did the national anthem and then they brought the players out. But they wanted to recruit people for the military, so they thought, how patriotic would it be if we had all our NFL players stand there? So they're being paid from our taxpayer dollars to stand and do the anthem. I think that they should. I, for one, didn't boycott the game. I watched it. Do I really care to see them kneeling? No, I really don't, to be honest. I am tired of being entertained and politics being involved. I went to a concert last week that halfway through the concert, it became political. The whole thing became political, and people just got up and walked out. I was one of them. It was just like, I paid $500 for this concert. I've heard enough. It just went on and on and on, and I walked out, and it was like, you can't watch an awards show. You can't go to a football game. You can't go to a baseball game. You can't go to a concert without it becoming political. I just want to be entertained. I can turn on CNN or Fox News if I want to listen to politics, so I understand where people get frustrated. They just want to watch the game. Should they be punished? I don't know. That's up to the NFL to figure out how to handle that. I'm not angry with them for doing it. I understand why they're doing it, but I just think there's other ways of doing it, not at a football game.
Michael.
What came first, the chicken or the egg, though? Okay, I see a lot of politicization of this issue, but not so much for the players taking a knee. I see a lot of people taking advantage of that to express their own political views. For instance, the president throwing gasoline on the fire. Okay, using that as an opportunity to rally his troops, so to speak. That's what we're politicizing it. Okay, Colin Kaepernick or other people or a handful of individual players. Opening night Patriots game, one player took a knee. One of the Kansas City Chiefs took a knee. None of the Patriots did. president comes, throws gasoline on the fire, totally to politicize it. What happens? So yeah, this whole thing's been politicized, but it's been politicized the other way. You have a bar owner who made sure every single network in Boston knew that he was shutting down his, not showing the games on Sundays, so that out of protest. Well, so who's politicizing this and who's making a big deal about it? The actual players who are silently kneeling, or the people who are expressing a whole bunch of just bluster about it? We have the foremost football historian in the area on our show here. He can tell you that, yeah, it is a new thing. This whole thing is new, this whole anthem thing.
If I could just make one quick comment on what Michael said. What we have now is protesters are protesting the protest.
Right.
Okay, that's the reality of it.
Right.
There was a small protest, and now you have people protesting the protest. Well, wait a minute. If they have a right to protest, doesn't they? Where does the right to protest end?
Right. Mark?
Well, I had a lot to say about this.
Okay, we only have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll go quick. First of all, the NFL, as a private organization, even though it's a multi-billion-dollar company, has the right to do whatever it wants. It can discipline its players. Under Article 46, which we're all aware of course, from the Deflategate, the commissioner can do whatever he wants, and the courts have supported that. I personally don't like people disrespecting the national anthem, but I also value our freedom to make a statement, to protest. I think that's important and obviously fundamental in our country. And if individual players want to do that, and they can get away with it because the commissioner isn't going to stop them, or the franchise isn't going to stop them, then they're going to do it, and they have the right to do it. And I support the right for them to do that. I think, as Mike said and as Stephen said, this has been over politicized, polarized. The problem is we don't listen to each other. Okay, we speak, we protest, we don't listen. The issue is race in America. And sports and race go together like hand in hand, and they have for a long time. Mm-hmm. Anybody on this panel know who Bill Willis was? Anybody know who Jackie Robinson was?
Yeah.
And we all know that Jackie Robinson was the first player to cross the color barrier in Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
What year? 1947. Okay. What year did the color barrier get broken in football?
Don't know.
The year before. 1946, and we don't know a thing about it because Paul Brown, who hired Bill Willis to play for the Cleveland Browns, wasn't trying to make a political issue. All he was doing is trying to get the best man for the job, which Jim Brown lauded him for because he said that's the way it should be. We need to have a conversation about race. We've come a long way. I've written a couple of books about Celtics that suffered a lot of trials and tribulations because they were black. Sam Jones was told by a reporter in Boston that he was hired by the Celtics because Bill Russell needed someone that looked like him on the team. He was first referred to as a rookie as the Dusky Demon from North Carolina in the newspaper. So that's where the conversation should be. Not about the national anthem. The conversation should be on how we deal with the issue of race in America. And sports has a lot to do with that.
Perfect way. Really quick, one-word answer. Apparently Rex Tillerson called Donald Trump a moron. Donald Trump went on Twitter and challenged him to an IQ test. Who would win that IQ test, Cindy?
Tillerson.
Rex.
Tillerson.
Definitely Tillerson. I don't think Trump could pass the blood test. That's it. We're out. We'll see you Saturday for the Democratic State Senate Candidate Forum. Thank you for joining us here on Fitchburg-Leominster All Politics, Flap TV. See you next time.